There was an interesting interview about a week ago with Mark Webber, who was the former manager of the global brand of development of Transformers and GI Joe at Hasbro. The interview was pretty interesting because it talked about pretty much how they started creating the Prime Wars trilogy, the shift of what was going to be done with the Generation line, and how it was going to be more based around gimmicks rather than just being what Generation was up to that point, which was just the Generations line up to that point was always modern versions of classics characters.
Right.
Now, because the Generations line was now going towards those characters that were gimmick based, it seems like now Generations has always been a theme now. Combiner Wars, Headmasters, now going into the Pretender shells and stuff like that. And so him just pretty much talking about how those play patterns were and stuff like that. Uh, pretty much talking about the lukewarm reception that came from past gimmicky kind of lines that they did, like when they did Power Core Combiners.
Right. Right.
Little things here and there. One thing the reason why I bring up this whole interview is the one thing that he brought up that was really interesting, and I didn't see anyone else talking about it, so it was really cool that he talked about it. So
Mm-hmm.
he was saying that at one point there was plans to do a Transformers Generation 3 series. That was going to be a whole new different kind of style of art and everything like that. He wanted to do a character that was a Decepticon Hearst named Tombstone,
Mm-hmm.
a Transformers Snowplow. He wanted to do like a whole bunch of,
Some interesting concepts in there.
well,
Like kind of
it's
like
like original designs, like just like
yeah.
what alt modes have we not done up to this point? And while a Transformer Snowplow has actually been done up to this point, at least twice in my knowledge, Iceberg with Transformers Armada, and then of course Sentinel Prime with
Yep.
animated. Um, but I mean, it's him pretty much going like, well, what could we do different this time around, different alt modes and stuff. He also, again, and with this Generation 3 series, he wanted it that it would be a whole new crew of Autobots that are hunting Decepticons, and with a completely new Autobot leader, and who would not see, like, eye to eye with Optimus Prime and everything. And it was just he wanted to do something that, according to his words here, would almost end up pretty much becoming like a hero versus hero team thing,
Mm-hmm.
similar to that of Marvel's Civil War. And ultimately, in the end, all this didn't happen. It sounds like a lot of those concepts ended up kind of being used into what the new Robots in Disguise series is,
Mm-hmm.
where ultimately, in the end, we did get a lot of original art designs, a lot of weird kind of named characters and weird designs. The leader was an Optimus initially in this series. It was a Bumblebee who was kind of the lead of this series for a long while. But ultimately, in the end, a lot of his other ideas never came to fruition
Yeah.
with this series. But it's cool, like, because the idea of Generation 3 has always been a term that has been thrown around for many years within the Transformers fandom. I remember when Beast Wars first came out, a lot of people would say, well, Generation 1 was Generation 1, Generation 2 was Generation 2, and Beast Wars was Generation 3.
Right.
And I mean, I remember even there was a bootleg that was kicking around for years and years of Inferno, and I have it to this day. I tracked it down, where it was like a Transformers bootleg, and it said Transformers Generation 3 on it, and it was
Yeah.
like a repaint of G1 Inferno done in like wacky colors, and a little remold on them and everything too. So like Generation 3 has always been, it's always been a term that was thrown around but never solidly attached to anything. And it's interesting to hear a Hasbro employee bring up that there was once an attempt to do something like that, and that Generation 3 would be something very separate from what is being done now. Because now it's always like you got to have an Optimus Prime, you got to have a
Yeah.
Megatron, you got to have a Bumblebee, you got to be safe with
I
your.
could I could also kind of see the whole op the playoff between the two heroes, kind of like in Prime, where you have Ultra Magnus comes and he's above Optimus,
Mm,
and they're trying to tackle things two different ways because Optimus is trying to like not damage the Earth so much, and Ultra Magnus is like this is a planet that's beneath us, whatever, you know.
yeah.
I could kind of see that there too,
Well, see, and that's something that
and same with
you mean with animated, essentially.
with animated and Prime. I kind
Yeah.
of feel that kind of plays in.
And it's just from what it seems, uh, that they were just going for something that probably Hasbro was like, and again, these pitches, according to him, were happening during that beginning of Combiner Wars and stuff like that. So like knee deep in the moments of when they were still trying to stick with the status quo. So, I mean, me personally, I always like something that's different. I think that every time you stray away from the core of what Transformers is, it's not necessarily too bad a thing because
Hmm.
as long as you keep the concept, it's transforming robots from a Cybertronian planet and there's a war going on. As long as you keep that general concept there and you keep the main characters being the robots, anything else you could do is only the cherry on the cake, which is if you do a completely different leader and a completely bunch of new characters, it's almost welcoming. And the funny thing is when we usually look at people that always say, and again, we talked about like what our favorite Transformers series is, but always the general consensus when you talk with people like what are the best Transformers series of all time, every single one of those series are always ones where we're introduced to a brand new crew of characters. And that
Yeah.
includes Generation 1, because Generation 1, when it was introduced to people, new cast of characters. It was all
Yeah,
fresh. It
exactly.
was all fresh people for us, and people enjoyed it for that. 86 movie, new cast of characters for us. Beast Wars, new cast of characters. Animated, even though there was a Bumblebee, that was a very different kind of Prowl. A very, Bulkhead was not like the one shot Bulkhead that we got back in the day
Yeah.
from Energon and stuff like that. Like it
You
was.
gotta, and then also the lockdown, the lug nut,
Oh
those
yeah,
characters that came back
there
again
was.
in other series or other
Yeah, like
movies, even.
outside of the what I call like the quintessential four, which is the Megatron, Starscream, Optimus, and Bumblebee, everyone else was a really fresh take. Even the way that a Blitzwing was handled, the way that all of the clones for Starscream, if you will, which would have been like the other seeker jets and stuff, that was handled in a different manner. A lot of stuff was very freshly done in that series. I mean, it's something that when you do something different, no surprise, those seem to be the series of that people like the most of Transformers. It's always like the one where the ones that seem to play it safe don't always seem to get the best reception. Where you could look at those Michael Bay movies and go, look at all the money they make, but at the
Hmm.
same time, do people truly enjoy them? Is the other
Yeah.
question. You know what I mean? So because those movies, they play it safe. If anything, they don't involve the robots because they feel that it's safer to not involve them.
Yeah, pretty
But
much.
yeah, interesting interview from Mark Webber. The full interview was done from what was called the Full Force podcast. It's season 4, episode 9. If you're looking for it, just throw that in your little Google machine and get the full interview. And it's really interesting. And I mean, me, hey, I would have bought a Hearst Transformer in a heartbeat.